A very good morning to you all. Thank you very much for coming out of the sunshine. We hope that we provide some illumination around AI journalism trends today. My name's Charlie Beckett. I'm a professor at the Department of Media and Communications at the London School of Economics, and I run something called the Journalism AI Project. This year, we expect to do training and support work and innovation with at least 4,000 journalists in more than 100 different countries in at least 4 languages around the world. So please go and check out all the wonderful free resources that we've got at the LSE Journalism AI Project. Today, I'm really pleased to have 3 brilliant people who really are involved in using journalism, doing journalism and being interested in AI, and who have their own personal experience, but they're all people who take a much wider perspective as well. So, on my far right is Ezra Eeman, who is Head of Strategy and Innovation, correct?
Director even.
Director even, sorry, yeah, okay. For NPO, which is the Dutch Public Service Media Organisation. And it's, if you don't know about NPO, it's complicated. Less complicated than it used to be, but it's very complicated. Ezra also has a utterly unmissable weekly newsletter called Wayfinder, which gives you latest news on new products and systems and research and so on. So sign up for that one. On my left is Sanuta Raghu, who, as you'll see, is not Gina Chua. So Gina can't be in Perugia. She offered to do it remotely, but that would have been 4 a.m. in New York, I think. So I'm really pleased that the wonderful Sanuta is here. You also have a sort of towering role as strategy and innovation at Scroll in India. Again, if you don't know Scroll, you should. It's been going for some time now and is an incredibly successful, pioneering digital news publisher in India that is also at the cutting edge. Sanuta's going to be talking about Scroll, but also she's currently, on top of that, is doing a fellowship at the Reuters Institute in Oxford. And to my right, Karen Howe, who is one of my favourite, can I call you a tech journalist?
Yes.
Yeah, tech journalist, because she really knows her stuff. She knows about technology, but he takes a very journalistic, critical approach to it and has worked at all sorts of interesting places. Currently a writer at The Atlantic, but also does training around AI and journalism with the Pulitzer Center. And very excited. I haven't seen the book, so I don't know how good it is. I'm expecting it to be very good. It's called Empire of AI, Dreams and Nightmares, and it's about OpenAI and the very lovely Sam Altman. So Karen is going to be talking about that. I really will make an effort to leave plenty of time for questions, and in return I ask you to keep them incredibly brief. I don't want to have that 3-minute question that I got on the last panel. So we're going to kick off with Ezra, who's going to do a little bit of bringing us up to date. It's like, I think, 2.5 years now since ChatGPT was launched. We've sort of had the outpouring of hype, both the kind of dystopian bit, but also the utopian bit. And since then, people have been working hard to see what works. So I'm going to kick off with you, Ezra. Give us a sense, and perhaps even some practical examples of what's really happening.
Yes, thank you very much, Charlie. And maybe to add to that, it's not just from a personal perspective that I'm telling this. I'm also the lead for the AI in Media initiative from WANIFRA. So I'm on a daily, weekly basis in contact with a lot of newsrooms. And what you feel is, I would say, both on the user side and in newsrooms, that we have moved beyond the hype. We kind of see that AI already has impact Both on the user side, the adoption is quite rapidly rising, as well as in the newsrooms where they see a real return on investment, not without its troubles and its challenges. I think a lot of newsrooms have taken their time to understand where there are pain points in their workflows and in their processes, where they can start applying AI and have real impact. They also have started realizing that they need a very good foundation. A lot of us have messy data, it's unstructured, it's not ready to build good RAG systems on top of. So having your data vectorized, and I see the difference between those who have done it and who are now building on that foundation and can really make smart AI toolboxes, can make custom agents on top of that, and those who have been exploring external tools and have done fancy experiments but have not moved beyond that stage. And I think there's two tiers of publishers around, I would say. So finding that place in the CMS, in the workflow, has been one thing that has been happening. It's also moving from the individual use, a lot of pockets of exploration, smart people adapting to AI. It has become something that has been adapted to teams, full teams that are starting to use AI workflows. And positioning people in the newsroom. So you've seen the rise of kind of bridge figures that understand AI and they can bridge from the newsroom to product to really start prioritizing use cases, because before you know it, you have a thousand IDs and nobody to execute them. I think another layer, so that's everything that happened so far in the newsroom. Another shift that we've seen is really moving from that core newsroom tasks to the experience. What can we start doing in our products? What can we start doing in our websites? And experiments with chatbots, with answer engines. How does that look? I think there's at least 20 or more cases out there. A lot of them have traction in the beginning. People are excited to start using it. Afterwards, really having people coming back and creating a habit on these chatbots, that's still a hard one to crack. But I think those that are doing it are learning how at least people react on it, what the problems are. A lot of people ask questions and then don't get an answer because the answer is not available. And that's a frustrating experience because ChatGPT always gives an answer. So how do you deal with that? And I think finally, the expansion of partnerships. We have seen still a growth in partnerships. I think we've kind of come to a moment where the big AI companies are realizing this is as far as we can go with our current partnership teams. Like we're 5 to master the world, and we can no longer accept new partnerships. There is a slowdown of these partnerships, even if there is publishers knocking on the doors of these AI companies to do it. I think that's the first kind of wrap-up that I can give for this year.
Okay, that's great. One of the things we do with the Journalism AI project, we're very much a kind of global. We're very much a global project, and we're very interested in whether, for example, smaller organisations or organisations not in lovely rich countries like the Netherlands, how they use it, and is AI another inequality, or can it act in some way as an accelerant for journalism in those places? So, Sunuta, what's your experience with Scroll?
Absolutely. There are, I mean, if I were to start with or add to what Ezra said, there are quite a few problems that we encounter on a daily basis. We've been doing this for about 5 or 6 years now, 2-3 years sort of sleeves folded up and building stuff. So there's a whole lot of problems that I can talk about. But the other side to this is for countries like India, who are multilingual, who are in the global majority. AI can really leapfrog countries like us into the 21st century. And two sort of big and low-hanging fruits for us are, literacy barriers and language barriers, and solving both of them. And if I can just contextualize this for you, the official literacy numbers in India are about 77%, but need to be looked at with a lot of nuance again. And the number of people using voice search on WhatsApp is close to 60% of the smartphone users, which is for a country like us, that's 540 million Indians, right? And if you're able to crack something like an automatic speech recognition, if you're able to get the languages right, we have 22 official languages in India. If you're able to crack that space, then the information needs of people are met, and we are literally able to leapfrog into, what like urban 21st century looks like. So that's broadly where I'm coming from, yeah.
So with something like the auto speech recognition, how well is that working? Are you saying that you're literally able to adjust to different languages?
We're not able to, so there are a lot of complexities. Again, every multilingual society will face this. So one of the things is and a lot of Asia is also very infamous for this, is we speak in code mixed language. So we have, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, all bunched up into one phrase when we are conversing with people. We have, the way we write and the way we speak is very different, which means our written documents are, the data set to read text needs to be very different from data sets for speech. These are very, very complex problems, and you need multi-dimensional rich data to solve this. Currently, what we have is our Hindi data set, for example. Again, to contextualize that, 500 million people speak Hindi, but the Hindi data set has archaic written like text documents part of the data set. So everything that you see on Google Translate, for example, the output that you get is quite archaic. This needs to be built upon. In fact, our government is, has launched this thing on a massive scale called Bhashini. There's Microsoft Research that's doing fantastic work on this. So work is happening. It's a very complex problem, but needs to be solved fast for this to happen for us.
And give me a sense of what difference, or in what areas it's made a difference. Is it about, content creation, editorial, or is it about audiences with AI specifically?
I think content creation is definitely the lowest hanging fruit, right? For us audiences, I don't think we are yet able to do this in a user-facing way. But yeah, I mean, everything from summarization. So we have a text-to-video tool that we built out 2 years ago. And so we have everything from summarization to, text-to-speech, music generation, repository linked, retrieval of images and media and all of that. And it's working in terms of we're able to do it. We went from creating 0 short shelf life videos to 20 a day. And our editor is happy with it, which is a huge plus for us. So these are very doable today. And we took 8 months to build out the tool, but today you're effectively able to build it in 3 or 4 weeks.
Another quick question. Obviously, India is a place with lots of technology skills and resources, and your particular news organisation was built on the idea of kind of whatever you want to call it, new media, digital and so on. Has it been a very positive experience in terms of the people you work with, or where's there been friction?
Do you mean in terms of buy-in?
In terms of buy-in and general effectiveness, do they feel this is superpowering their work? Or?
It is, because again, we're a very tiny team, and we've always looked at sort of technology as a force multiplier for us, right? Because even before sort of the infinite scroll came into, sort of common usage, we've had the infinite scroll on our organization is named Scroll, and it's this meta thing. But tech is at the heart of a lot of the things we do. So our leadership, our journalists are very tech forward. So it hasn't been that much of a problem. Of course, when it comes to putting out AI-generated content, I was just telling someone some time back that our editor-in-chief has looked at every copy that went out during the elections when we piloted our text-to-video product. So that aspect is definitely there, but it took us 1 year to sort of secure that buy-in with journalists. In fact, all our journalists came together to design our tech policy. Hard road to travel, but we were able to create small POCs, secure buy-in, do bigger stuff, secure buy-in. So we did it in a very step-by-step way.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. Karen, I remember when 2.5 years ago when ChatGPT was sort of unleashed, and the interesting thing was that everybody could use it. So suddenly all these chief executives who had been ignoring tech generally, to be honest, suddenly were playing prompts, and I was stunned how excited they were, and still are actually. There's a remarkable kind of optimism about it, and I guess part of that is simply that they think this is some kind of magical solution that's going to give them the efficiencies that will solve some of their financial problems. The other thing that they said to me was, we like the idea that it's not just OpenAI, that there's going to be a competition, although all of them seem to have ended up doing partnerships with OpenAI. It's a fantastic story. Sam Altman is an incredible guy. It's been a story in itself. Why did you write the book? It's kind of obvious, but why? What were the things that really gripped you about that story?
Yeah, I think in order to answer that question, I should just share a little bit more about my background. So I am an engineer by training. I went to MIT for undergrad and worked in tech, and never thought I would become a journalist. That was like not in the cards. And in the time that I was in Silicon Valley, I became very disenchanted by what I saw of the incentives around what kind of technology actually gets developed. And the answer was that it was almost never aligned with technology that would actually benefit the public and be in the public interest. And so I went and started covering tech as a journalist because I was really interested in just digging more into how to solve this incentives problem, and also try to share more with the public about just like the way that the tech industry works and the culture and the kind of mindset and ideology that drives Silicon Valley. And so I started covering AI in 2018. So I've been covering it for 7 years now, and began doing that at MIT Technology Review, where we, at the time, were really focused on just understanding the most cutting-edge developments that were happening within academia. Like, it wasn't even ready for commercial use yet, and it was at that time that I first started noticing OpenAI. And so I was the first journalist to actually profile them. I went and embedded inside the company for 3 days in 2019, and my profile came out in 2020. And I was quite critical of them at the time because they had fashioned themselves as a nonprofit, and it became quite clear to me even then that that did not seem to be what was happening. And I was quite concerned that a lot of the kind of ideological drives that I had observed myself in Silicon Valley were kind of now being imbued into a technology that was being sold to everyone as the future. And in order to access this future, you need to go to OpenAI or whatever, all of the previous social media, internet generation companies, you need to go to them to deliver that future to you. So ultimately, to me, this was a story, like a very canonical journalism, investigative journalism story. This is a story of ideology, money, and power, and how Silicon Valley has once again found sort of a way to try to fashion themselves as the conduit through which everything must happen. And this is their way to continue to consolidate resources, consolidate wealth, consolidate talent, knowledge, and now increasingly land, energy, water, in order to deliver this, amorphous vision of progress. And so when ChatGPT came out, I was very familiar with OpenAI, I was very familiar with the technology, I was very familiar with sort of like the history of AI and the context of this technology, and I felt like none of that was being talked about because it is, you know, from the perspective of people who hadn't been observing the company or observing AI, it really did feel like ChatGPT landed from the heavens, and like there was sort of like a contextlessness around where this came from, and it was almost like, you know, this is just an inevitable technology that now everyone should use, because if you don't use it, you're going to fall behind and be automated away by it. And none of that, I think, is true when you actually understand the story of where this technology came from, and what are the values and drives behind the creation of this technology. And so that's why I decided to write the book. And the reason why it's called Empire of AI, it tells the inside story of OpenAI, but this is a narrative backbone through which to also examine this much bigger story about how Silicon Valley is trying to use AI as a cloak around continued consolidation of power. And we should actually be thinking of companies like OpenAI, like Google, like Anthropic, as new forms of empire, because they are quite literally, you know, they take resources that are not their own. They lay claim to resources that are not their own. They're increasingly laying claim to land that is not necessarily their own. And they all do it under the guise of a civilizing mission of we are ultimately benefiting humanity and bringing modernity to everyone. And so, yeah, I really wanted to just give kind of that historical context and inject that into the public discourse, because in order to understand what AI is going to mean for all of us, especially AI delivered at the hands of these companies, and the future that will bring, we need to understand the past. And so I guess to wrap up kind of this and why this is sort of relevant to us as journalists, I think it's really important in the conversation around AI to disentangle two different things. First of all, there are many different types of technologies that are called AI, and it's very confusing. And there are certain types of technologies within the large AI umbrella that I think can be incredibly supercharging of our work. And there are other types of technologies in this large category that I think we should be shying away from and not be looking at. The other thing I really think we need to differentiate is the technology and also the creators of that technology. There are many different providers of AI tools these days, and they are not all the same. And specifically the tools that come from companies like OpenAI or Silicon Valley, I think we need to be incredibly cautious and suspicious when we use these tools because of ultimately, you know, what they're building these tools for.
And just picking up on that last point, where are we? I mean, you talk about an empire of AI. In some ways, it's kind of competing empires, isn't it? What is different about OpenAI and where are we at? Because obviously a lot of news organizations around the world are now having some relationship directly with it. Who are they dealing with? And is it so different to whatever, you know, Microsoft, Google, Anthropic, etc.?
Is it different? In some sense, no, it's not different at all. And I think the progression of more and more media organizations partnering with companies like OpenAI is basically a repeat of what happened in the social media era, where a lot of news organizations partnered with Meta, partnered with Google, hoping that there would be some kind of productive, mutually beneficial arrangement. And then ultimately many, many newsrooms, local newsrooms, smaller newsrooms, newsrooms from the global south, nonprofit newsrooms, were all screwed over when Google and Meta decided it was no longer in their interest to play ball. And so I worry a lot about the fact that we are kind of seeing this repetition again, because no, OpenAI is not different in that sense. And of course, a lot of the partnerships are also still happening with Google or happening with the old guard of companies. The way where I think it is different is that there is so much more like ideological BS that now wraps the delivery of like the technology, like social media also get engaged in language about like this is the future and we're going to transform society and change the world. But I think the AI industry kind of just brings it to another level because the term artificial intelligence, which has a really interesting history in and of itself, which I talk a lot about in my book, it was originally coined as a marketing term to incentivize more funding towards research that was originally called something totally different. And intelligence, like this particular word, does so much work in kind of short-circuiting our brains into thinking that this technology is inherently good, because intelligence sounds great, like we want more intelligence in the world, and I don't think that layer of AI was the same with something like social media. Like there wasn't an inherently embedded goodness to the phrase social media.
Yeah. And I should say in passing that, like this festival, my project is, of course, funded by Google, or in part. Who isn't funded by Google here? I don't know, sorry. You're not.
I am not.
You're definitely not. Ezra, we'll come to questions in about 10 minutes or so, but looking forward, it feels like we're in a sort of catching our breath plateau phase. What are the trends looking forwards a bit, do you think, for AI and journalism?
Well, I think I quickly want to reflect on the partnerships and go from there. I think the realization, and talking with a lot of publishers that are entering these partnerships, they're not naive in this. They're very aware that this might be a short-term game at the moment, and that they might get everything that they wish from it, but they're also pragmatic in the sense of, if we want to learn how this environment works, if we want to get any data in terms of how users interact, what it does in terms of referrals, does it gain traffic for us or not, how is our prominence, what kind of attribution model would work in that's better if you have a seat at the table. So they're claiming that seat at the table for the moment in a very pragmatic, I would say, way, and I know there's hundreds of ways to discuss if they should do so, but most of them see it as better being inside the game than outside of the game and watching it happen anyway, because the second evolution that you see is user adoption of these platforms is going at a higher rate than news subscriptions at the moment. Young people in the US are having an AI subscription, they're not having a news subscription, because AI chatbots deliver on more user needs and more jobs to be done than a news subscription. You can ask questions on health, you can ask questions on where to travel, you can ask, and it feels like it delivers to that. I'm not sure if it delivers on that accurately, if it's the best possible answer, but in terms of from a user perspective, they deliver that value in a better way than a news subscription does. And that's the kind of tough question that we will have to answer as a news industry. How do we understand what these AI assistants do, and how do we bring that back to our own destinations? And does it work only with what we can create, or should we start pooling? Like a discussion that we have with public broadcasters in Europe is, why don't we make a shared data pool of everything that we produce together? So if people have a question and we don't have that answer as NPO, maybe France Télévisions has, or maybe the BBC has, or maybe somebody else has, and then you enrich the value you can give back in that sense. So I think that will be the next challenge. How do we compete with answering those user needs as a news destination, but maybe also as a service provider to people?
Similar question to you, Sunita. I mean, you're doing, actually, in Oxford, you're doing some research which is forward-looking, so please tell us about that.
Yeah, it takes off from what Ezra was just mentioning now, that, younger people seem to be gravitating towards buying a ChatGPT subscription as opposed to a news subscription. So what I'm looking at the Reuters Institute, and I'm hoping that I'll have some answers in 3 months, is what could data dignity look like for us as an industry, and specifically, how should we be thinking about text provenance? So we know that, all of our material is already in these chatbots. This is not, a secret. I can tell, for my organization, I'm able to query some very specific things and get outputs. So we know that it's in there. It also sort of, one of my friends said that think of it like a lawnmower, which, sort of takes in all your material, and then what you have at the other end is mulch. So it's nutrient rich, and it's very good in quality, but at the end of the day, it's not really, it doesn't resemble the source really. So how do we attribute that mulch? How do we look at each element within that to the source that it came from? And I'm looking at it from the tech angle, I'm looking at it from the copyright angle. Broadly, that's what I'm looking at.
And you've got 3 months to sort this out.
I've done some work in the last 3 months.
Okay, good luck with that. Karen, you mentioned that you do work with the Pulitzer Center. I don't know if you call it training or helping journalists to come in. You've got this bigger picture. You're helping them to prepare for this kind of new environment that, as you say, you're very critical about. What are you saying to people?
I kind of want to answer this question by also responding to the comments. So one thing that, Ezra, you mentioned that I think is a really good point is that, like, there is sort of this pragmatism in which newsrooms are trying to approach this thing. That said, there is, I think, a different path to engaging with what is happening now than simply assuming that it will be inevitable and therefore we need to work within the system. I think we as journalists need to remember our role, which is ultimately that we cover and investigate companies and hold them accountable such that the future will be different and it will not be inevitable, something that might not be actually beneficial for society. And so one of the things that we do with Pulitzer Center, I started a training initiative with them called the AI Spotlight Series that is all about training journalists on how to cover AI, not just use it, which Pulitzer Center also does incredible work supporting journalists on how to use AI, specifically the category of AI tools that are very empowering. But we want more journalists to be investigating this story because the more we actually talk about the fact that, for example, these companies actually do not want journalists to exist. So if you're talking about a pragmatic partnership with corporations that genuinely want to obliterate our industry and think that the world will be better off for it, is there really a pragmatic way of engaging in that kind of partnership? And the more that we highlight the kind of ideology, the kind of Faustian bargain that is happening here, I think we also shift consumer behavior. Like, it is not inevitable that the next generation will just start consuming their news from ChatGPT and stop getting news subscriptions. Like, we literally shape public discourse when we educate people more about what is actually happening here in terms of all the power dynamics. And ultimately, you don't actually get high quality news from ChatGPT. One of the things that we talk about with the AI Spotlight series is these are probabilistic technologies. You feed your articles into ChatGPT, they're not gonna come out accurate and fact-checked and rigorous on the other side. We just saw an example where Apple tried to roll out an Apple Intelligence feature where they were summarizing news headlines. And they literally summarized a headline which originally was from the BBC saying Luigi Maggioni stands outside court. And it said, shooter Luigi Maggioni stands outside court waiting for decision or something. And Apple Intelligence literally summarized it to Luigi Maggioni shoots himself outside court. And the way that they branded and kind of designed the feature, it looked like BBC had actually written that headline and was like sending that notification to tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users around the world. And so we need to educate the public about that. That is our role as journalists, is to explain the technology, to investigate the companies, to hold them accountable. And all of the training that we do with Polis Center is completely for free. And I'm actually doing a session tomorrow where I'll do a 50-minute version of our workshop if everyone is welcome to join. But yeah, that's kind of like, for me, the thing that is most important in terms of when journalists are asking how should we be engaging with AI, we should be doing what we've always done, which is to cover the story and to educate the public.
Ezra, and then...
Yeah, I just want to ask a question because I think you make a very good point. But how can we also create the alternative? Because I think we've seen exactly the same narrative and position against social media, but as an industry, we never created social media platforms ourselves.
Yeah.
So we ended up being there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question. I think one of the things that I really discourage, one of the reasons I discourage partnerships, or I really don't see them as like a very good bargain, is because there's a huge cost. Like, you're giving up a lot of data to these companies in exchange, and I don't actually think the cost-benefit trade is equal in this kind of arrangement. But there are a lot of open source technologies that do the same things, or almost the same things, where you actually don't give your data to a company. You're getting the benefits of the technology, but you're not trading it for all of the, incredible journalism that you've been supporting that the companies will ultimately try to cannibalize through getting that data from you. It is obviously a much harder path. It requires a lot more technical skill from like the journalism side, from newsrooms. And of course, there are many newsrooms in which that is going to be very difficult to find that kind of skill and that talent. But I do think that this is a critical opportunity within the industry to do what you were saying, like build coalitions where lots of newsrooms partner together, try to pool resources, try to build up their own technical capacity such that they can take open source models, refashion them into tools that actually work for the newsrooms, work for the journalists, without trading all of our data and our journalism to companies that ultimately do not want us to exist in exchange.
Just that, I think we should look at the data sets that go into training all of these models as American on one side and rest of world on the other side, right? Because the examples that are given on the American context are almost never applicable in all other contexts. So in my part of the world, for example, if we look at the fidelity to source when it comes to the output that is generated, it's quite high because you're able to, the data set again is very, very tight. Yeah. The knobs to turn aren't as many. So you're able to, so we did an experiment just before our elections where we said it was a red teaming exercise to say, how easily are we able to distort facts, manipulate narrative, fabricate sources, and inject neutrality into our sources. So Scroll again is quite an attacked website. So people threaten to clone us and do things with it all the time. So we were just trying to see how easy it is to do that, and it's very, very easy to to have that high fidelity to source, right? So it's yeah. It's a very different problem when you look at it from the rest of world lens.
Yeah. I did say we'd go for questions. I mean, this is fascinating, but I said I'd go for questions. Has anybody got very brief questions? Is there a mic coming, I think?
So my name is Ulrike Lange. I'm a media innovation journalist based in the US, but I'm German. And my question is for Karen, because you said something very stark, that AI companies have no interest in journalism, want to obliterate journalism. And I wonder if you have insights into the inner workings of the minds there. Where do they think that quality content will come from if journalism is destroyed?
So one of the things that I talk a lot about in the book is that there is quite literally religious movements that have developed within Silicon Valley around AI. And what they believe is that they are quite literally recreating God, or creating God, whatever it is, and that ultimately AI will be able to supersede humans in all different types of tasks, and the quality content will come from the AI. This is like a genuine belief, and something that I was actually quite surprised when I was reporting, because you think that this rhetoric is meant to actually just be kind of marketing that these companies talk in the public about to try and make their technology sound more all-powerful than it actually is. But there are actually people who genuinely, deeply believe this. And I spoke with many of them during my interviews. So that's the answer, is like they think that ultimately all humans are biased, like we shouldn't have human judges, we shouldn't have human journalists, we shouldn't have human therapists. We will all be better served if we just feed everything from like human history into AI, and then AI continues to evolve on its own and becomes its own superior race. Like, this is how they talk. And that's part of the reason why I think covering this phenomenon is so important, because I don't think this is really something that people realize is like how they talk, that there are these ideological religious movements that are brewing, that are dictating how they're trying to develop this technology.
So you believe that...
You've had one question. No, okay, next one. Just pass it across this guy.
You can have a conversation afterwards.
Yeah, my question, is for Karen. No, the thing is that when I'm using artificial intelligence, I'm feeling that I'm going to a trap. So I'm a journalist, and I want to know, we have to use it or not? Because it's like I'm a sinner when I'm using the...
So one of the things that we do for AI Spotlight Series, we have a framework for how to evaluate whether you should use AI in journalism. And I'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow during my workshop as well with some examples. There are two axes. It's a very simple framework. One axis is what you're doing, does it require low accuracy or high accuracy? The other axis, is it going to be audience-facing or is it going to be internal-facing? And the best sweet spot for using AI, and again, I would recommend using AI tools that are not from, like the Silicon Valley providers, but if you must, the sweet spot is when you're trying to perform a low accuracy task that is internal facing research. You will have many other fact-checking, editorial review processes all along the way before it reaches the audience, so you can ensure accuracy and make sure that the quality of your journalism stays high. Where you should not use AI is if you are trying to deliver something straight to your audience and it's going to be high accuracy. So some of the best examples of AI supercharging journalists is in filtering down vast amounts of information to then have a smaller, much more manageable pool of information to comb through manually. So actually there was a New York Times investigation that won a Pulitzer Prize last year where they were looking at 2,000-pound bombs that were dropped in Gaza, and the way that they did that was by training a machine learning classifier to identify things that looked like a 2,000 bomb crater in satellite imagery, and they set the classifier to be overly inclusive. So like capture all of the things that just even vaguely look like a 2,000-pound bomb, and then they manually reviewed every single image, talked with on-the-ground sources, did their typical reporting process, but that initial filtering, where they didn't have to literally scan the entire Gaza Strip in satellite imagery, that supercharged their work. So that's one of the ways that I think AI can be really powerful. But like the question of whether you need to use it or not, it really depends on, what you're working on. Like I rarely use it in my journalism, in part because most of my journalism is narrative and I'm not actually doing these larger scale data-driven or image analysis projects. But for other journalists who might be doing those types of investigations, it might be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, please, Samantha.
If I were to just add, right, if we're all trained as journalists to be very, very skeptical right from the get-go, right? I would apply the same amount of skepticism to everything that you're doing. So I would say don't be scared of it, but it comes very inherently to us to be skeptical, right? And that's something that we're trained to do. So I would apply skepticism to it if you were to use it.
Excellent. Yeah, and maybe to add to that, I think it's important how you set it up. Is it a proprietary system or is it an open source model that you have rack-based on your own kind of data? I think that makes a huge difference.
Exactly. Please.
Okay, hello. My name is Nora, and I'm a journalist of Belarusian service Radio Free Europe. And I have a question to, I think, everybody of us, of you. Could you please name 5 processes in your daily or professional life that you have automated with using AI?
Karen hasn't.
No, I actually
Maybe
have.
top 1, top 3, top 5.
Do you not even use things like that?
No, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah, we use a lot of AI already in processes from subtitling. We have a lot of programs that we subtitle. Translation is something that we do. Transcription is something that we do. We have a very successful text test now done with moderation, and that's mainly because we use so much of our moderation time to moderate negative and toxic comments, and actually we want to use that time for positive engagement rather than for negative engagement, and having an AI flag those toxic comments really helps save time. Labeling, a lot of the insights that we get is we do TV broadcasts, so labeling our broadcast programs to identify topics, to identify the guests in the news shows, helps us to better balance the programs. So there's a lot of use cases that bring value already to us.
So I don't use any generative AI. I don't use chatbots. I don't use image generators. But I do use a lot of, well, not a lot. I use predictive AI sometimes. And the difference is generative AI is all about, generating the text and images. Predictive AI is what came before, which is things like machine learning classifiers, identifying things within images. Google reverse image search, I love. It is a predictive AI tool. When I was writing my book, I wanted to know how expensive OpenAI's furniture was. So I took a screenshot and I fed it into Google reverse image search, and it turns out that their chairs cost $10,000. And so that was a great narrative detail that I added into my book. The other thing that I am quite interested in trying to do moving forward is there's this huge data center build out that's happening, infrastructure that is popping up all over the world. There's no database right now that you can go to see all of this colossal infrastructure being built. And so I'm discussing with a bunch of other journalists, like how can we build a machine learning classifier, sort of like the New York Times, and trying to identify through satellite imagery all of these data center projects so that we can actually start investigating them.
If you meant to ask if we automate anything, we don't automate anything at all. There's always sort of an expert in the loop that looks at every output that goes out. But if we are using it in sort of assisted ways, then we've built out a text-to-video tool. We're building a text-to-interface tool. We've built, as part of the text-to-video, we've built a repository-linked image tagger. We also use it. We have a POC, again, I don't know when we'll get to it, but it works. It's a style guide-based autocorrect that's meant to sit in our CMS. Our government has a lot of open data sets that have been made available to us, so we have a research tool that's able to query all of that. Yeah.
I'm going to go for one last question. I know we've run out of time. There. I can't. There's nothing next. Very quickly, go on.
Yeah, so my question is on, do you think, given all the dangers of Silicon Valley AI, does it make sense for journalists and journalistic organizations to have their own LLM model, like a LexisNexis of that is, and go really strongly after the, the copyright protections in the other LLMs, right? Because you have this sort of...
Ezra? Is that part of your collaboration thing?
I think building your own model is not something what I would engage in at the moment. I think there's plenty of good open source alternatives that you can start using as a foundation, and then you have to really understand how do you structure and vectorize your data as a RAG base for these models. So I think that's the way to look at it currently.
Excellent. Listen, I am going to have to end it there. I found that really exciting and stimulating, and my brain is whirring. So thank you very much to you three, and thank you very much for paying attention and asking such great questions. And enjoy the rest of your festival. Thank you very much.